Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome once again to the weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Verdilla, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Nina Ashford, Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. James Bridgers, who is the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Deputy Chief of Public Health Services, as well as Dr. Earl Trotter, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to talk about something we don't normally talk about, Supreme Court decisions. 8 years ago, during the 2016 presidential election, one of the key issues was that either Trump or Clinton were going to have the opportunity to nominate multiple candidates to the Supreme Court. And this was also the same year that Senate Republicans refused to give a hearing to President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland, citing that it was a presidential election year. Well, elections have consequences. President Trump nominated 3 extremely right-wing justices, including his third nominee, ironically, in the 2020 presidential election year, as Republicans don't even care or hide from their own hypocrisy from 4 years earlier. But the story gets worse. Over the last 3 years, we're feeling these consequences. 2 years ago, the court overturned Roe v. Wade, and last year they ruled that anyone, anywhere has a right to carry a gun in public spaces. And this year, this conservative court continues to flagrantly destroy the democratic process and trample on the rights of our citizens. Over the past week, we've seen the Supreme Court deliver a series of cataclysmic opinions. One after another, these decisions have created a heightened sense of worry for many people about the future of our country and our planet, and those worries are not unfounded. I'd like to focus on just a few of them and express my concerns about their potential impact. First, allowing jurisdictions to criminalize homelessness. It would be hard to be more inhumane than passing laws that made it impossible to sleep. Homeless people need help. They need services that lead to recovery. They need some compassion, and they need a place to lay their heads at night. If we as a society can't provide those beds, at least we ought to allow them to find a place where they can sleep and rest for the night. It's not ideal, but throwing them in prison is inhumane and fundamentally unjust. It's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be stunningly expensive to deal with, and it would be cheaper to house people than to keep them in jail. So this is really worrisome. Second, the High Court put limits on a federal law aimed at eliminating public corruption. The ruling will allow gifts and payments to politicians as long as those rewards come after favorable action is taken by the state and local officials instead of before. I thought this was a joke originally. It's not a joke, and it basically creates an IOU for bribes. Something as simple as telling a legislature, I'll remember your kindness, in order to have our legislators making decisions based on personal gain and self-interest. This is a fundamental attack on democracy. And any of you who've been paying attention to the political discussion, you've heard many notable politicians talk about the money they give to people they don't agree with to ensure that legislation in their states doesn't impact the businesses they own. This is not some mysterious story, or that's not something that doesn't have a basis in reality. This is a real thing. And the idea that you're going to be able to bribe somebody after the fact and then not call it a bribe is really, I think, a challenge to democracy. You're not going to know whether your legislator is legislating because it makes them richer, or they get a nice vacation, or whether they're legislating because they actually believe in what they're doing. And putting this confusion into the public sphere, I think, is going to be really hard for a lot of people to stomach. Giving the Supreme Court the power to decide challenges to regulations has the potential to significantly impact the health and safety of every American, because the court does not have the expertise or capacity to properly evaluate and assess these cases. As difficult as it is to produce complex legislation, and we in the county have had to produce complex legislation, this only gets worse if Congress can obstruct the rulemaking and let anyone at any time challenge an existing regulation. This has the potential to eviscerate the regulatory system. This matters. Think about how long it took to get regulations to deal with asbestos or air and water pollution or greenhouse gas regulations. None of those regulations occurred the moment that somebody realized what damage was being done. It took years or decades to get legislation passed. Today, we're dealing with PFAS. I think a lot of you have heard this phrase PFAS of going about for a while. These are the forever chemicals that are apparently everywhere in our environment, including milk. They're permitted to be used in a way that made that happen because, or the fact that they were permitted to be used in this way happened because we already have a pretty weak regulatory process to begin with. Now, as agencies like WSC are taking actions to remove PFAS from water, and that will be incredibly difficult and expensive. And of course, the companies that produce the PFAS won't pay a dime. It's going to be us who wind up paying for this. It will become incredibly difficult to create regulations that will have to be approved by Congress to deal with the latest impending health crisis. PFAS usage is a poster child for a poor regulatory process and not the example. But now we need a concerted effort to get this stuff out of our water, our food, our clothes. And we're going to have to convince Congress that public safety is a higher priority than corporate profits. That will not be easy given this Supreme Court. But the decision that most Americans are worried about was probably the one on presidential immunity. The court determined that the president is immune from criminal charges when the acts are done in line with the duties and responsibilities of the office of the president. That is a very long leash. The idea of executive immunity is outrageous because no one should be above the law. And that includes the president of the United States. It's a threat to our democracy and could significantly change the way a president operates. The court provided no clear guidance as to how far a president could go. Could he declare political opponents to be terrorists or agents of a foreign power and have them arrested? This is what Putin does all the time. Is this something we're supposed to be emulating? If we are, why are we complaining about Putin? Representative Raskin, oh, I forgot, Trump doesn't complain about Putin. Let's point that out. Representative Raskin was scheduled to join me today for his take on these decisions, but unfortunately had to cancel his appearance. We look forward to having him back on our weekly media briefings in the future. We'll be talking about this more over the coming weeks. These decisions could literally be life-threatening, particularly if a Supreme Court who lacks any competence to make decisions in anything involving science becomes the arbiters of what's safe and what's not. On a happier note, last Saturday, I had the chance to attend the special reunion in Tacoma Park. Actually, the reunion was off of Forest Glen Road, but it was for Tacoma Park residents. And it was the Tacoma Park homecoming. And I know Tacoma Park pretty well. I moved my family there around 1980 because it was at the time one of the few inclusive, fully integrated communities in the county and region. For several decades, Tacoma Park has been integrated and the people are not excluded because of the color of their skin. Unlike many places in the county where Black people could not find housing at a time when there were restrictive covenants that blocked Black people from living in most of Montgomery County. Much of the covenants also restricted Jews from living in the same neighborhoods and occasionally included Catholics. So this was Montgomery County in the 1960s when I moved here, still segregated and still fostering segregation. Tacoma Park wasn't that place. So on Saturday, when the community came together to celebrate a homecoming, it was wonderful to hear their stories that date back decades of integrated schools and neighborhood. It made me proud to think of how the community evolved, where the lives of its residents, regardless of color, were interwoven. People saw their community as what should have been the natural order of things. And I wish that everyone could think that way. I'll be starting this 4th of July ceremonies at Tacoma Park's 4th of July parade starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And it'll be the start of a very festive day with a street party that night along Maple Avenue between Philadelphia and Ritchie starting at 6 p.m. Montgomery County will also continue its tradition of supporting free fireworks Thursday night at South Germantown Recreational Park and Friday night, another fireworks show at Kensington and Albert Einstein High School. I want to remind people, setting off fireworks is not allowed in Montgomery County, except for when the county sets off fireworks. Fireworks remain illegal because they pose a danger to those lighting them and anyone nearby watching them. So enjoy the legal festivities. Unfortunately, we don't have enough officers to enforce all the calls about fireworks that we're going to get tomorrow night and Friday night. Yes, it's irritating, but your call should go to our non-emergency police line 301-279-8000. Do not call 911 unless there's a life-threatening injury or an imminent emergency event like a brush fire or a house fire. If you're going to celebrate with alcohol, make every effort to find a safe ride home. Besides finding a bus, rideshare, and taxis are also great options for planning ahead and getting last minute help. Montgomery County's Vision Zero effort is sharing information about how to get a discounted ride home from Lyft on its website, or you can visit soberride.com. This past Sunday, we wrapped up Pride Month in Montgomery County with the annual celebration of our diverse LGBTQ plus community at Veterans Plaza in Silver Spring. It's both a celebratory and an educational event. There are opportunities for free HIV testings and other health screenings. Our health department tested double the number of people they had anticipated testing. Celebrating Pride sends a message to our community, letting them know that they have a place here. Lately, in too many parts of our nation, they felt unwelcome. Historical discrimination is something we need to recognize and do our best to continue to fight. But many in the LGBTQ plus community are doing everything everybody else does, but they're not accepted like everyone else is. When we don't include people, we cheat ourselves of what could have been a valuable contributor to our society. We need to let everybody in, let everybody contribute, let everybody be who they are. I want to thank our sponsors and the volunteers who helped make this year's Pride in the Plaza a success. And our HHS team always plays a big role in Pride in the Plaza. So now is a good time to check in with them for any updates they'd like to share this week. So it's off to you, HHS.
No updates for me. Dr. Bridgers?
Thank you, Dr. Ashford. None for me, but I echo the county executive sentiments. Pride in the Plaza Sunday was well received. We had a great turnout, and thank you, Mr. County Executive, for supporting our LGBTQ plus community.
No update from me today.
Dr. Stoddard, anything from you?
Yeah, I did want to talk a little bit about these illegal commercial house parties that have been happening. The county has been, we've had a multi-department collaboration that's been aimed at attempting to address these go forward. That includes both county agencies, but also, frankly, state agencies, because the state alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis administration does control the unlicensed distribution of alcohol, for example, at these house parties. So this collaboration includes not just our Department of Permitting Services for the commercial activity, our Department of Environmental Protection for noise violations, Health and Human Services for unlicensed food distribution, as well as the amusement tax. Fireworks obviously are done by our Department of Permitting Services through the Fire Marshal's office as well. Disorderly conduct and noise for their police department. And so we have a multi-department collaboration that's ongoing. We are aware of, we can't identify whether they're Montgomery County parties, but we can see where there are dates and times listed, and you obviously have to know the super secret handshake to be able to get tickets. And so we're sort of monitoring. We know when those events are going to be, and we're going to have teams prepared to respond to them should they emerge in Montgomery County. They could be somewhere else in the region during those same dates and times, but we are monitoring them and tracking them and preparing to have resources available to go out and respond to them in real time. I think it's important to understand, though, that most of the infractions are civil infractions, meaning police, we see in the movies, police go in and break up college parties all the time. That's not the way it works with some of these civil citations. They're issued, and they'll be issued in real time or immediately thereafter. But going in and breaking up activity on a private property is limited to criminal activity, and often some of these are civil violations. We do need, when there are civil violations, to work with the court system, the district court system, to expedite the review of these, to get these people in front of a judge, get a judicial abatement order, in which case violation of the judicial abatement order would constitute a criminal offense as well. Some of these houses have been repeat offenders. They know they're violating, and those are the houses that obviously we're focused a lot on moving forward. So I'll stop there, and I guess we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Before I get too long, the Einstein fireworks is Saturday night, not Friday night. So make sure that goes out in the message right. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. County Executive. Members of the media, we're going to open it up for questions right now. Please your hand and we'll call on you. Any questions this afternoon? Oh, there is Marianne Chassad, Montgomery Community Media. Good afternoon, Marianne.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Just for the county executive on some of the new leadership that we have. Now that the county has a new school superintendent and a police chief, what kind of progress or what are you hoping to see for the county?
Well, I mean, I feel pretty strongly that departments have been, pretty well run and, have been successful in dealing with a lot of the challenges that we face. We've been working with our, for example, with fire, to create a department that's more nimble because our calls increasingly are health calls rather than fire calls. So re-envisioning how we do some of the things we do that make them more responsive, I feel like we're getting leadership that understands that, leadership that understands the complexity of working in Montgomery County. It's a dual volunteer and paid, firefighter system. We have unions, so they're familiar with working in that environment. They're familiar with working in a large county. So I feel pretty good about that. And, I didn't sit in on the superintendent in interviews, but I'm optimistic that the superintendent understands the kind of challenge that the system is facing right now. The last year has not been an easy year for the school system. And I hope that he's getting some good guidance and taking a lot of notes. I am hopeful that the school board will be a little bit more present in the decision making. It is not good to tell us that the previous superintendent, wasn't doing what you wanted when the school board votes for everything the superintendent proposes. So I would hope that the school board is more engaged, and I do hope they get staff and the resources they need to really be able to function as an oversight agency better than they do today. So those are the two you mentioned. And Chief Yamada is, I've said this before, coming into the police department, was part of a leadership team that helped us make the kind of transitions we made after George Floyd, the reexamining of the work we do and how we do a lot of their work. And it was because the team was able to actually make meaningful progress and make meaningful changes that I had confidence that I could find somebody in this department, knowing that very few departments outside Montgomery County had attempted to do the work that we were doing at the scale we were doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Members of the media, any other questions for county officials today? Oh, there you are, Marianne, again. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can I ask another one?
Yes, of course.
So, some local leaders posted their reactions to the presidential debate last week. So I wanted to ask, did you watch it and do you have a reaction?
I wasn't happy. I think I felt the moderators did a terrible job. There's supposed to be a debate. The moderators didn't make Trump debate. They didn't make him talk about the topics that they raised. I thought that the president probably should have bagged the debate strategy, because reciting facts when someone is repeatedly lying is a really difficult thing to do. And he just should have taken Trump on in his own terms. His audience is largely fact-proof anyway. And I think that he should have confronted the president with the long list of crimes and malfeasance that he exhibited as president, because that clearly was not what the president had no intention of discussing, the debate topics that were in front of him. So I was not happy with the way that went, but I blame a lot of it on the moderators for their failure to moderate.
Thank you so much. That's all for me.
Thank you. Brian Sears, Maryland Matters. Good afternoon, Brian.
Mr. County Executive, following up on the last question and your reaction to the debate, do you believe that moving forward, Joe Biden should be the nominee, or should the party look elsewhere?
I think it's a discussion that involves a lot of people, and people have to make their own individual assessments about this right now. I don't think, one event should knock somebody out. I mean, if one event knocks somebody out, Trump wouldn't be sitting there in the other seat. So obviously you can do things wrong repeatedly and not be disqualified. So I think that's something people have to think about, and I think the president has to think about.
As a
But
follow-up,
but to do this, another debate, if he can't adopt a different strategy and a different way of operating that format, I think it's gonna be challenging for him.
do you personally have confidence, given the concerns that you've raised about the Supreme Court decisions and the potential for another Trump presidency? Do you personally have concerns that the president is the right person to beat Donald Trump in November?
Look, I've heard him speak, and I thought, listening to him speak the day after, he's perfectly capable of articulating what he needs to articulate, and he's got a record that he can actually run on and talk about. And I think he needs to be prepared and approach the debate in a way that exemplifies that, rather than going into what I think was, a confusing and disoriented situation. I've been in debates before, and you have to be able to shift. If other people aren't playing by the rules, you have to be able to shift to whatever rules other people are playing by. I think that's something he could and needs to do better. But I think his record is really strong. I mean, it's amazing to me that people don't understand or appreciate what's been done with the economy during his term. There's a lot of positive stuff happening. A lot of jurisdictions, even red states, have benefited from the policies. There's, jobs and industrial growth beginning to happen. I think somehow all that's gotten lost. And it could be because just we've got such lousy newspapers in this country now that they don't really talk much about facts. I mean, it's way different. I mean, the Post is nothing like it used to be when I was growing up. And even the Evening Star, which is a Republican paper, actually spent a lot of time with the details of news, and you could actually learn from it. I feel less and less are you able to learn from the media, and that's a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Members of the media, any other questions? Please raise your hand. No more questions this afternoon. Going to once, going twice. I guess we're done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Stay safe that 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.